The Cecil County Council work session meeting for May 7th of 2013. Calling the meeting to order, and I do want to make a short announcement that the Citizens Budget Advisory Committee will be making their presentation to the County Council at 1:30 this afternoon. So there may have been some confusion on when that was going to happen, but it will be 1:30 this afternoon in this room. So anyone that has an interest in hearing what they have to say, and quite frankly, have we gotten anything from them yet? Okay, so we, the council, don't know what they're going to present to us yet. Bottom line, welcome anyone to come back this afternoon at 1:30 to hear what they have to recommend to the council. The first item on our agenda is approval of meeting minutes. The first meeting minute for approval is April 30th of 2013. Are there any corrections or additions to the April 30th work session meeting?
I have four very minor changes. On page 2, fourth paragraph, the budget-related legislation will be considered rather than would be considered. Under council manager report, fifth line down, take out, there's a semicolon, take out and put a semicolon after the next line, 2013. You following me on that? Page 2.
Council manager.
Right there. And the last one is there are 2 semicolons after Councilwoman Bowlesby commented on a meeting in social services. Take out one of the semicolons. That's it.
Are there any other additions or corrections to the meeting minutes? If not, may I have a motion to approve with the amendments?
I move for approval with amendments.
There's been a motion and a second to approve the meeting minutes with amendments. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, the meeting minutes for April 30th, 2013 of the council work session is approved. The next meeting minutes is April 30th, closed session meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to the April 30th council closed session? Hearing no mention of additions or corrections, could I have a motion to approve?
I move we approve the minutes as presented.
I'll second it.
There's been a motion and a second to approve the April 30th closed session meeting minutes. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously. The next meeting minutes is April 30th of 2013, the council workshop meeting. That was in the afternoon. Is there any additions or corrections to the workshop meeting minutes?
I would just ask for the correction on page 1, last paragraph, a motion made by, just insert by, EY. Just very minor change.
Is there any other additions or corrections? May I have a motion to approve the workshop meeting minutes for April 30th?
I move we approve the minutes as presented.
Second. There's a motion and a second to approve the workshop meeting minutes for April 30th. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion is approved unanimously. All right, the next item on our agenda is a update from the mayor of Cecilton, Mr. Joseph Zhang. You want to speak from the podium? You want to pull up the chair? Do we have a microphone? Can you yell?
Sure. Not a problem.
Not at us, just
He
loud.
needed to be recorded. He needs to have a microphone, or is it?
Jim, why don't you bring a chair up and you can use my mic.
How many microphones do we need? I don't know. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me now?
Is it working?
Can the audience hear?
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
Speak up a little bit, Joe.
Yes.
Speak up. Update. Can reference to,
Anything you wanna say?
Well-
I understand that you have an issue about drug-related problems and anything about Pierce Creek?
what I have an issue about is, it's budget time. And what I'm hoping is that the council will take into consideration not cutting the public safety budget. We have lost a vital part of what I consider the protection for the lower end of the county, which was our street level crime unit. Very effective in, putting the small drug players in their place. No one knew where they were. These guys were, I would say, fairly stealth in the way they operated. They had built quite a group of informants. They really did their job very well, and they're gone. They've been gone, I think, since about October. And that's just something that I don't understand. We need to make sure that we are backing our public safety folks the best we can to ensure the safety of our public. And in Cecilton, obviously, we do not have a police force, so we rely on the Sheriff's Department and Maryland State Police as our safety, folks. So I'm pleading with you to please review the budget. If there are things that you see line item wise that maybe need to be shifted, work with the sheriff to get those things approved. That's my main concern.
Can I respond to that?
Sure.
Is that okay?
Yes.
As you know, I appreciated your attendance at the community policing forum that we recently held. And it was, held because there was a, talk, that we'd like to see more of a community policing effort put forth by the Sheriff's Department. In fact, the street level crime unit, in essence, is a form of community policing. What I'd like to see from the sheriff is how he's going to use those resources. And it was brought to my attention that over in Harford County, they utilize a number of resources in getting the public involved. And you can go to their website and see they have constant contact, they have they just have a number of resources on their website. The request that he put in for 5 new sheriff deputies, I want to see how he's going to use that. Also, I think sometimes he might not do a good job of showing how is he in comparison to other counties of the deputies that he currently has on his force. Just a comparison of police officers to the population and how many town police departments there are in the county. Overall, how many police to population is important to see. But also, what is his plan? And he admitted he doesn't have a master plan whereas other jurisdictions do. So, when we provide funding, we need to know how those resources are being utilized. We need to hear from the public how they want them to be utilized. So more communication on this. I appreciate you coming and letting us know this. The response time at Cecilton is not the best. So I agree, you need something on the ground right away so that you can respond.
Okay. Mr. Zhang, have you talked to Mr. Janney, the sheriff?
Absolutely.
Do you feel, or has he confirmed that in the current budget that's been proposed has sufficient resources to do what you need done in Cecilton?
And you have to remember, it's not just Cecilton.
I understand that.
Yeah, it's Earlville, Warwick, anyone below basically the canal or the Bohemia River. He confirmed to me that it was a manpower issue, that he had put in 4 or 5 new deputies. And I agree with Councilwoman Brumell that it's definitely a communication issue. The sheriff needs to be able to come down and sit and talk like I am, and everyone has to really voice their concerns because we're all in this together. The dollars, you know, I don't know what the dollars are. I remember at the meeting with, the Harford County Sheriff, they have a tremendous budget. I mean, he's got 60-some million, I think, is what he spends. We have to work on a lot less money, but I think we have to work a little smarter, and that really requires better communication, amongst the towns, the communities outside the towns, and the county council. But his response to me was that with the additional manpower, he would be able to put the street level crime unit back in play. And I think that's critical, because nobody knows where those guys are. They just show up and they do their job. And they were very instrumental in removing a lot of the traffic in our area.
I don't think it would hurt also to have, a sit down with, the sheriff and to see what his plan is, just to get a confirmation that
Sure.
he will promise that, police officer, and to have an annex, spot where they can be. Also, I communicated with, Chris Meekins of Governor Harris's, Congressman Harris's office about the, support for the HIDA designation. We have a threat assessment done. The HIDA designation would utilize additional resources, for fighting drug trafficking.
Right.
Sheriff Janney has since supported it wholeheartedly, and, all we need now is the funding.
Right.
So,
That's great.
I've asked all the players to send in letters of support, and Mr. Massey, did you draft the letter?
Not yet.
I'm sorry, it was last minute, so.
Well, I think that when Sheriff Janney was here, he indicated that the 5 new officers would be directed toward drug control, if I'm not mistaken. So
Good.
he firmed that up with you.
No, he's indicated to us, though, that it would be, they would be put on the street deputies patrol.
And that's where you need you need a real understanding of what does that mean.
Right.
Is that simply for traffic control?
Right.
Or is it for what, you know, we're missing down south? Yes, sir.
Mayor Zhang, have you had any communication with the drug task force?
I have not.
Can I encourage you to do that?
Sure.
I think that you should discuss with the drug task force, who is,
Ken Russell.
Oh, I know Ken.
well,
I know.
there are many people in drug task force, and they work together, the state police, the sheriff's department, and others. And this is their goal, is drug, enforcement.
Right.
And so I would definitely, tell them what your concerns are and see what they can do to help.
Sure.
Did you want to bring to our attention anything else? Can you give us a short summary of your meeting with the Army Corps of Engineers and the Port Authority on public order to, the communities surrounding Pierce Creek?
Sure. I would say it was, 3 weeks ago. Met with, the Army Corps of Engineers, Maryland Port Authority, and MES. They came to Cecilton, wanted to see if we would be interested in being listed as a solution, one of the solutions for the problem of the tainted water in western shores of Bayview Estates. We had a very good discussion, very open discussion. We have, based on our information, we have the capacity to supply that area with water. It would require updating of our permit for the amount of water we produce, but we have the capacity to produce it. So, what we did, the next step was we had our council approve us as a solution. We provided that information to the Corps, and we did come up with a bulk water rate, which is in play right now with MES. I believe they're putting together a proposal for the Corps and Maryland Port Authority. That's where it stands right now.
Do you have enough water allocation to pull water out of the ground for that?
Right now, we're only permitted for, I think it's 90-some thousand gallons a day. We average about 50 to 55. But they would help with the upping of that permit, but we have the capacity. The wells will do it, and the capacity is there in the tank and the system to produce 360,000 gallons a day.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to tell us about that? Do you think they were interested in that as a possible solution?
I think they were. I think it all boils down to dollars. You know, the question of, what's the cost of running 7 miles of pipe and then putting in a distribution system, versus individual wells. And I really believe that they're trying to overcome the fear factor of what is in the groundwater, and really the only way to do that is to bring in water that's, safe.
They could also disclose those reports that the public has been requesting down there, from 95 to present.
I think there is a report online. But I'm not sure which report you're referring to.
Is there anything else you'd like to bring to our attention?
Not that I'm aware of right now.
Any of the council members have any other questions?
I was wondering, in your growth, plan, master growth plan, is there any additional growth area that, this water allocation might be taking up? I didn't know if that might be an issue later on, just to look at the full picture.
What we have done is based on the infill that the town could handle, adding the water to Westview Shores and Bayview Estates is well within our capability.
Good.
Yeah, we have no plans on expanding the town. So, right now, everything would be fine.
Excellent.
Thank you for coming and visiting with us.
Thank you.
Before we go to the next item, I failed to mention that Councilman Gunn has notified the council that he's not feeling well and will not be able to attend our morning work session, and it's not clear whether he'll feel sufficiently better to come to our afternoon meetings or our evening meeting. We'll have to wait and see how he feels. So he sends his regrets for not being here this morning. The third item on our agenda is the budget hearing procedure. Mr. Massey, do you have anything you want to bring to our attention?
Just to review that we will allow the public to start signing up to speak at the budget hearing at 6 tonight in the lobby. We're prepared for a large turnout. There's also been some interest generated by the bill opposing the Maryland Firearms Act. We will be asking the public to limit their presentation to 5 minutes. And we'll be calling up 2 at a time so that the next person will be sort of standing and waiting so that we can be efficient in our time. And then during public comments, people can sign up as well so that they could actually sign up 2 times, one time during the public hearing and one time during public comments.
The firearm resolutions that are pending are not subject to public hearing at this time. So anyone that wants to speak to the firearms would speak during public comment, right?
Yes.
And does the public understand that they're looking at all 4 resolutions at once? I mean, they're speaking for all 4 resolutions.
We have signage and we've explained that as best we could, yes.
I have a question.
Okay.
Mr. Line, on the public hearing, what is the purpose of, how does that work? To get your concerns on the record during a public hearing, what is the value in that if it's being challenged later? I'm sorry, if we have an attorney, I would be asking them right now.
That
but
may
we
be a
can't.
question better served for Mr. Allison. Are you speaking of that specific piece of
Yeah,
language?
the problem that I see with this is that we have 4 hearings that are rolled into one, or actually 5, because we've got the budget hearing, and then we have 3 resolutions and a bill. And all of that is being restricted to 5 minutes that you can speak on them collectively. Is that going to be an issue, do you think?
I don't think so, because all these resolutions are a component of the budget in its entirety, so they're all a piece of the FY 2014 budget.
So if someone
The
had,
capital and the operating budgets.
if someone had a bit of testimony that they wouldn't have enough time to, you know, get that out in 5 minutes, they could submit it for the record.
That would be up to the council, normally, Yeah, written testimony, written letters of support or opposition are, usually part of the record of any proceeding.
Okay, thank you.
The thing is, if we gave, you indicated there could be as many as 50 people signing up. If we had 4 issues, gave them 5 minutes on each issue, that's 1,000 hours, that's, 1,000 minutes, that's 13, 14, 16 hours.
I understand, and I understand why these were put on with the budget hearing, because it's related to the budget, but in other times, there could be people that wanted to just talk about the, increase in the, in one of these things because their business is related to it, disposal fees. They might have lengthy testimony, but he addressed that, in that they could submit a letter for the record. Just wanna make sure their due process is covered.
I would encourage anyone that has more than 5 minutes worth of testimony to put it in writing regardless. If you're gonna give us that much information and data, then we should have it in writing. And I know that just because the public hearing will be closed soon after our testimony is received tonight, that doesn't mean that the information that we receive between the time of the public hearing and the time of decision is not given serious weight. So anyone that has significant testimony that's going to exceed 5 minutes should definitely get it to us in writing by fax, letter, email, or any other method that they can get to us. If you're going to talk and talk and talk, we'll probably forget it anyway unless you put it in writing. So is there anything else you'd like to say about the budget tonight?
No.
Okay, I will make it clear tonight that you can speak about the budget, the tax rate, the capital improvement program, or the disposal fees at the landfill at the sanitary district, where they can mix and match their discussion about any or all of these. I think in the matter of being efficient, I think it's the best method to handle this matter. All right, is there any other discussion about the budget hearing for tonight at 7? And quite frankly, anybody who wants to come during Citizens Corner can also, we normally have plenty of time to talk about issues also. So anyone that has something to say can certainly get their message to the council. All right, let's move on to Pierce Creek. Jim, what did you want to bring to our attention?
You had asked me to contact the Army Corps of Engineers, which I did, and spoke with Timothy Kelly, who's the project manager. He said that basically the Army Corps of Engineers are looking at 2 simultaneous problems: the existing water problem around Pierce Creek, and then the proposed opening for dredging. He said that MBA is working with them on the current water problems, and that the Army Corps will be proposing to open the disposal area and looking how to manage it. Regarding the problems, he stated that there are several options. He's identified the 3 as asking the town of Cecilton to extend their water system to the residents around Pierce Creek. Another option is to drill deeper wells for the residents. And a third option is to have a central water system. He said each is very expensive. It's about $10 million project. And so we asked what's the next step, and he did inform me about there will be a community meeting at Pierce Creek on Saturday, May 18th from 1 to 3 at the entrance of their facility, the disposal facility, to talk to residents about their problems. He stated he'd be willing to come to the council after that to let us know. And in the meantime, we did receive notice from the Maryland Port Authority from Tricia Slewinski, who has informed us about the meeting, the open house, and I think there's an agenda on it. So they're to discuss the water alternatives, what's in the water, making the dredging impervious, groundwater zone of influence, what the health department well testing has been involved in, what are the sediments, how the dredging works, alternative placement sites, and then the economic value of the Upper Bay shipping to Maryland and Cecil County. So I'd like to pass these out to you, so you might want to attend the meeting.
Jim, if they're holding this at Pierce, at the site, how are they gonna do?
They're gonna put up a tent.
Oh.
They're gonna put up a tent and they're gonna, invite all the neighbors surrounding the facility to come and learn more about the facility and what's been going on. I don't think that at this point, they still have, made a decision on their options. I think that they're still talking about the options. As far as I know, no specific path has been decided upon. But I think it'd be well worth anyone that lives near the dredge facility to go by and visit with them and listen to what they have to offer. And that'll be on May 18th from 1 to 3. And like I said, I know they're planning to put up a big tent and have a lot of people there to answer any questions that people may have. Other than, I don't think that there'll be a final resolution on their options on how they're going to move forward.
Well, it doesn't look like it's gonna be a general presentation, it looks like it's gonna be stations.
Yes.
Stations here,
Yes.
so it's, okay.
So, yes, there won't be any speakers, there won't be any announcements, it'll be just go from station to station to learn bits and pieces of the process and what's going on. Is there anyone else that has any other comments on Pierce Creek? Then we move on to 5, which is the fiscal year 2014 transportation priorities, a letter of support. For those council members that are commissioners, we've done this every year for a long time. And for those council members that were not commissioners, the Maryland State Highway Administration asked that the counties provide to them what we, the county, believe are our transportation priorities. And so I think there's a sample letter which is very similar to last year, and I guess, Tony, are you going to bring us up to date on this?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Each year, the Department of Transportation has requested the counties to provide them with a letter outlining the specific transportation priorities of the county. Those priorities are then used as a point of discussion in the fall when the Department of Transportation has its annual tour meetings around the state. This letter, as was the case with previous letters, has 17 specific transportation priorities on the first page. It establishes that we have 4 broad categories of requests. One of those being public transportation improvements, another US 40 corridor and intersection improvements, the third one being Interstate 95 corridor access and mobility enhancement improvements, and lastly, there are 2 proposals under the 4th category, which is the US 301 toll diversion coordination actions, which includes trying to keep truck traffic out of Cecil. We also have on the first page, from among those 17, the very top 4 priorities, which are the redesign and construction of a new Route 222 I-95 interchange, which would include an upgraded bridge over I-95, the second one being an extension of Mark Penn Line commuter rail service from Perryville to Elkton, Newark, and possibly Wilmington. The third being the improvement of the US 213, US 40 intersection with adequate bicycle and pedestrian accommodation. And the fourth of our top priorities, the implementation of an I-95 and US 40 toll discount for Cecil County residents and especially businesses. Again, this is something that has been requested in the past. Last year, there was a new wrinkle, and it was a questionnaire that had to be filled out for each and every of the proposals. When we were done, what we submitted was over 70 pages in length, and that did not come this year. In fact, we did not have a specific request from the Department of Transportation. We questioned them to see if we had missed somehow the letter, the request. They said that there would not be a request this year, but if we did have specific priorities, they would like to see them by May the 15th. I would add that although we have not received a request, in order to react to that request, this is a proactive move this year on the part of the county, which I think is important, so that when we have the fall tour meetings, we do not have on the table just the state's proposals, but we also have, as a counterpoint, the priorities of the county as well. And by doing this, this allows us to promulgate these priorities so that the towns can then be aware of those, and the towns can put forward their priorities. That, I think, has been a hole in an unfortunate hole in the process of the tour meetings, where our 8 municipalities have oftentimes been caught flat-footed, not having time to prepare and to think about what their priorities ought to be.
Go ahead.
I was pleased to see the item with the toll discount, pursuing the toll discount, and I'm trying to find that one. I would suggest that you submit the toll resolution that you helped craft, that we adopted 2 years ago. Where's that at on this, Tony? Do you see it?
It's on, what, the toll discounts
Yeah.
in here? You're looking at?
Yes, 301, number,
Oh, that's diversion, okay, I'm sorry.
For the toll discount?
yeah,
I don't know.
item number 4, good, okay. So I would just, because the toll resolution also had the financial data backing up why we needed to pursue this. And with the elimination of the toll discount coupons, significantly higher for those pulling trailers across the bridge. I guess Anibon Basu's report might be good as well.
Kenny, the chamber has listed these same priorities probably for at least 6 or 7 years that I know of, and nothing gets done. What do you think the chances are of getting one or all of these done?
I think that getting the number 2, the extension of Mark Penn line, I think that is, that's looking very good right now. And, we continue to be in an environment with inadequate resources for all the improvements that are needed in the transportation system. We are competing with the Baltimore-Washington metro area for those scarce resources. So I'm gratified that at least one of these top 4, we can begin to see the light at the end of the proverbial tunnel.
Even if they did one a year, or one every other year, at least we would get rid of the list. Okay, thank you.
Well, I know that they're moving forward on the 222 I-95 interchange, and I'm pleased that they separated the project, because the road, there's a number of residential properties on that road that would be severely impacted, and there needs to be very good communication with them to know what's coming down the pipe. But the interchange portion, they're moving forward on from what I've heard, and the environmental assessment, they're in the middle of that right now. They found funding. Okay.
I'm a little bit confused. First, you said we have a deadline of May 15th.
It is an unofficial deadline since they never actually requested the priority letter. But in querying them, they said in response to the question that if we were going to put together proactively such a list, they would like to see it by May 15th.
So year after year after year, traditionally we get it in by May 15th.
There was a
All of a sudden, all of a sudden they stop asking.
This questionnaire was never sent out for you to fill out like it had been traditionally.
But
That was a new wrinkle last year.
But for all the hard work you put into that survey questionnaire, I'd send that with this document also.
That you filled out previously.
Right. So, just so they know, they may not even have read the first one, we don't know. All right, so,
They had counted the number of pages.
so a document's been drafted, and the question is the county council willing to support this document?
I'm absolutely in support of it, having fought for this stuff for so many years.
Could I have a motion?
I move that we support the letter to Darrell B. Mobley, Secretary of the Maryland Department of Transportation, from County Executive Moore and County Council, citing the Cecil County Fiscal 2014 transportation priorities.
Is there a second? Second. Okay, there's been a motion to approve the Cecil County Transportation Priority Letter that's been drafted and before you. Is there any discussion?
Discussion on the second page, item 5, under US 40 corridor and intersection improvements. Road improvements on Maryland 222, US 40 to Maryland 275, in the interest of enhanced access and mobility and better congestion management, with the condition that there would be communication with the homeowners in the area.
I think that they're gonna do that, that's part of their job. I think
No,
that's
it wasn't.
Look, okay,
Okay,
okay, let me finish my discussion. I believe it's standard operating procedure when and if they have a plan. Up to this point in time, they haven't had a plan, so they can't notify the citizens of something that they don't know what they're doing yet. And so at the end of the day, I don't think that they haven't done their job. I think that they just haven't figured out what they're gonna do, if anything at all. And quite frankly, like most of these items on the list, it'll be shocking that they make progress, because they always come to the county and cry poor, that all they can do is system preservation. That's all I hear, this word, system preservation, that's their priority. And we know from what I've seen that they haven't been able to get much done on our priority list for many, many years. Being a county commissioner for poor and a council member, I don't see much activity. So quite frankly, any new projects like widening or improving Maryland 222 is probably way down years, if ever. But in any event, I've never said, and I don't want to suggest that they haven't done their job because of notifying them. In any event, I don't think we need to go down into the weeds in this letter at this
Can
time.
I explain why I brought this up? Patterson's Funeral Home, Austin Amos, I believe is the name, and other homeowners, were shocked to find out how far along State Highway was in developing the plan, and they actually had 3 or 4 plans in mind already, that they were seriously looking at, and the meetings that I went to after I was elected, I was shocked that this had been moving forward too, because as I've mentioned before, I do have a home on this thoroughfare, and if a county commissioner and now a councilwoman is going to these meetings and is knowing about this, and the residents in the area find out at the last minute that this is going on, they're gonna wonder why they weren't informed. I'm trying to do my job to inform the constituents in this area of what is going on and that they will be informed.
Okay, Mr. Giacomo, just on that.
Mr. President, if I may, the tour meetings that will occur in the fall offer us ample opportunity and offer the towns and citizens ample opportunity to, as you put it, get down into the weeds and talk about these things. And that's a process that is the envy of many surrounding states, because it's not perfect, because we've been harping on the same issues for a long time, yet it does offer the elected officials, the citizens, the towns the opportunity one-on-one to meet with people in the transportation department, including the secretary. And I assure you that does not happen everywhere. So we do still have that opportunity.
Yeah, but that's only after someone knows about it, that they can reach out to the constituents to let them know. And remember the industries that came forward about the toll increase. I contacted a number of those industries to come in and testify. A lot of people don't read the newspaper, you know, just have to do the best job.
Councilman Brumwell, do you want to make a motion to amend the letter?
Yes, I'll make a motion that we accept the letter as written with the addition on this item number 5 under US 40 corridor and intersection improvements to include with notification to the public in coordination of the plans that are being reviewed.
Is there a second? Okay,
Who
the
do you
motion.
want to make the notification, the state or the county?
The county.
How are we gonna make the notification when we don't know what the plans are?
Oh, we do know what the plans are.
Hold, wait, there's no second.
Oh, wait,
The
we're discussing, hold on a minute.
No, we're not discussing because there's no motion.
Right.
There's no motion. The motion failed for lack of a second.
Well, I believe she was discussing.
It
I was
doesn't,
answering
wait,
her question.
there is
I
no,
was
there is
out of
no
order.
discussion.
I was out of order.
Okay, if you want to make a second for discussion purposes, you're welcome to do that. But not, we're moving on. Okay, there's no second, the motion fails. We are going to consider the draft of the letter that's been provided to the council members. There's been a motion to approve it. And is there any discussion on this letter? Okay, all those in favor of approving the Cecil County 2014 Transportation Priority Letters, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, the motion passes 3-1. Thank you, Tony. Okay, the next item on our agenda is to discuss and review the council legislative meeting agenda for this evening. The first one is bill number 2013-04, amendment on zoning ordinance, floodplain districts. This is an introduction, and I guess Director Sandstrom has some comments on this.
Mr. President, members of the council, the item on your agenda this evening is in response from comments we have received from the state regarding the county's floodplain management ordinance. Just for a brief history, the county has had a floodplain management ordinance in its zoning ordinance since 1988. The current document was adopted when our zoning ordinance was enacted our current zoning ordinance was enacted in 2011. We adopted the model ordinance that the state had put out at that time. Subsequent amendments to that document have caused the state to comment back to us that there are several areas that we should revise to bring into compliance, or I should say bring into accord with what the state model ordinance has evolved into since 2011. They have requested that the changes be made to our zoning ordinance by July 8th of this year. The reason they selected that date is that is when the new firm maps will become effective, as well as the flood insurance study for the county will also become effective on that date. So you have copies of the proposed changes to the text that would be inserted into the zoning ordinance when the process of going through the council is finished. It'll be in for your introduction this evening.
Bottom line, what is the impact, if any, on property owners that have land in floodplain?
In order for those individuals who are either in a tidal or non-tidal floodplain to participate in the federal flood insurance program, the local jurisdiction has to have a floodplain ordinance in effect in the county. If we do not have a floodplain ordinance in effect in the county, then those individuals would not be able to avail themselves of the federal program and therefore would be at risk of not being able to replace whatever is damaged in a flood. So we have to have an ordinance on the books, which we do. Our ordinance is based on the state model ordinance. However, The state has made some changes since we adopted ours in 2011. These changes are not major changes to the document. It's not going to be creating a more cumbersome bureaucratic process, and it will be just trying to keep us and the state model ordinance in alignment.
Does it change buffers, setbacks,
No.
elevations? No.
Building restrictions.
The freeboard has changed, but that has changed in 2011 based on the model ordinance. It used to be a 1-foot freeboard, now it's a 2-foot freeboard.
What's the purpose?
That is the difference between the flood elevation and the first floor elevation that's habitable within the dwelling or office that is being erected.
Okay, are there any questions from the council members?
Yeah, is there any, negatives to being included in a floodplain?
Well, the only negatives, I guess, that you could say is that you'd be,
Insurance?
well, you'd be at risk of periodic flooding from time to time,
Get flooded out.
as those who
I
are
would
not.
think even though you're covered by federal insurance, you would have to purchase that federal insurance, and
Correct.
probably your immediate insurance company is going to require more coverage as well. Correct, cover you, yeah.
Yeah, private insurance companies don't provide flood insurance, that's why the federal government has created the federal flood insurance program.
So you really don't wanna be on this list.
No, some people enjoy living on a creek or a river or a bay, and it may be subject to non-tidal or tidal flooding, so they have to, if they wanna live there, they take the risk and they have to buy the flood insurance if they wanna replace whatever is damaged.
Good.
Mr. Centrum, in an area like Port Deposit, which has an inclination to flood and floods severely, are there premiums set to replace the entire dwelling? How are those premiums set?
That I can't answer, I don't know how FEMA sets the rates for that and how the coverage is. Yeah, but that's something that's not included in our ordinance. That's something that the individual would have to talk to Mr. Wine is reminding me that towns have their own floodplain ordinances within their zoning ordinances, but they don't go into that detail. That's a matter that they would discuss with the insurance provider as to what amount of coverage they will have as far as what is going to be replaced in a flood. And if it's a repetitive situation, sometimes the federal government has moved to just replace the structure in its entirety and raise it so that they can stop having to pay periodically flood insurance claims. You saw an example of that in Park Creek, just to the east of Elton, where several properties were acquired and structures were raised.
Are there any additional questions of Director Stenstrom on the floodplain zoning ordinance? Hearing none, we'll move on to resolution number 37-2013. This is being introduced tonight. This is the appointment to the redistricting commission. Any questions on this matter? This is an appointment by the council. And the redistricting committee has a meeting date set. And moving forward, next resolution is introduced by Councilwoman Diana Brumwell to be introduced tonight. Councilwoman Brumwell, do you want to have a short explanation of the purpose of this resolution?
I think this is it's a common sense approach to administering the community VLT grant program. The nonprofits, the organizations that participate. I remember the previous commissioner meetings, if there was something they disagreed with, they could come to a commissioner meeting and in a transparent and with checks and balances way, they could voice their concerns, and we were proactive. What comes to mind is Freeman Hall and how we were able to set aside funding for that project. And I'm concerned that the money, that is being, overlooked, if the county executive has control over this, where are the checks and balances? She doesn't have a public meeting, with constituents, not a place where they could publicly ask questions or share their concerns. Also, there was, she had proposed when she was running the county executive to fund a position in county government with the VLT money, and that to me opens up concerns. So this, to me, is a win-win, and the county executive could also propose by resolution her input, and which we could review. So I think it would have checks and balances and more transparency.
Is there any other questions regarding this proposed resolution?
I also wanted to point out that Vicki Rinkerman has been administering this community grant program from the beginning. She helped to develop it, and she of course is on our staff, and there would be a continuum of process with her oversight.
Any questions, comments?
Yeah, have you talked to county executive more as to whether she would continue to have the advisory committee that actually made the decisions on where this, made the recommendations on as to where the money would go?
Yeah. The advisory committee was formed when we were commissioners. I would assume that that would continue. The 3-year plan that was developed, even so, you know, they helped to develop, it was ultimately the commissioners that had the final say. And that was a concern that the county executive would have the final say, or the council would have the final say. So I would assume that the VLT commission would still continue.
I think that you brought up some very legitimate concerns, but I'm not sure that taking the responsibility of the grant program and pulling it into the council is the best way of handling this. And I think it's possible that because the charter changed everything, this is one of the things that it impacts. But I do believe that the county executive probably should have a policy and procedure for implementing this grant program. And at some point in time in that procedure, the council would approve or review the process or end result. So I'm not sure that this is the best way of addressing your concerns, but I think that it's a good idea that you brought up these issues that need to be talked about, so that there is some oversight, there is some input, public input, and hopefully we, the council, could have some impact on the results. So you're going to introduce this tonight, and we'll give it serious consideration. And in the meantime, I would ask the administration to listen to the concerns that have been brought forth and see if they can be addressed in another way. Is there any other ideas or thoughts or questions regarding this resolution?
Well, if you have amendments that you propose, I would be open to hearing what the remedies would be.
All right, great. Next resolution is Second Amendment preservation. Now, 3920-13, this is a new introduction that would be introduced by Councilman Michael Dunn. Does anybody want to speak for him today?
You mean 40?
I'm sorry?
Yeah, it's 40-213. I think this, what he had crafted here is similar to what was being proposed, I think it came from Commissioner Rothschild out of Durham County. And I had been to a meeting where they talked about nullification, jury nullification, It's a fascinating concept, in the rights of a jury to nullify a law they deemed was unconstitutional. And I would rather wait for, can we postpone this, or do we just proceed?
Well, I have a question. Can it be introduced if the councilman's not present?
I think it can be if the, if there's no opposition.
Would you look into that?
Sure.
I have a concern about introducing something without explanation, and certainly, I would like, there's a lot in it. This is one of the most complicated, lengthy resolutions that's ever been offered, with lots of stuff in it, and I'd like, some explanation, on some of these items that are in here. I'd like, number one, to determine whether or not, and this is something we need to put in our policies and procedures, whether legislation or resolutions or bills can be introduced if the sponsor is not present. I think it's critical that we have, for the public, needs to know why and what is in the resolution. Does anyone else have any questions or comments on the proposed resolution number 40-2013?
I have a number of comments. Number one, on April 16th of this year, I introduced an amendment for the preservation of the Second Amendment rights. This resolution 38-213, which has already been reviewed. I have the amendments here, which I would basically like to have Mr. Massey read into the public thing. I was not approached in any regard by Mr. Dunn as to amending what I had already put forward, and I'm certain he was aware of it because he was here when I did it. What he has presented to you as a huge preamble, it is almost entirely prepared by Mr. Rothschild, who I have a great deal of respect for. This is very, very wordy, very verbose, and I don't think it adds anything to what I've already proposed for the council, which is to be voted on tonight.
Right, I would personally like an explanation on why we don't amend the resolution that's already been introduced, rather than introducing a second one. I think we should try to attempt to amend what we have pending, rather than trying to offer additional resolutions. I'd like to have an explanation on why we're starting with two, rather than trying to improve one.
Well, my resolution, as you will see, is very succinct and to the point.
Mr. President, I'm naive, but maybe you can explain to me why is it, I've never seen any resolution we've passed to date with quotes from Thomas Jefferson, Alexander Hamilton, James Madison. I just think that just adds to the confusion for the public. I mean, to pick up a resolution that's this lengthy, John Adams, there's another quote. What's the purpose of that? Just to reinforce the thought process, or?
I think it reverts back to our constitutional rights of what our country was founded on. Many people feeling that our Second Amendment right has been infringed upon with the latest laws that were passed in the state of Maryland.
But this quotes the Federalist Papers, a lot of other things. I mean, I am for the Second Amendment. I will strongly work to defend it. But the amendment that Dr. McCarthy the resolution that Dr. McCarthy presented, I think covers all of this.
Well, he's got amendments that he's proposing, whereas with the amendment, they might be closer to what Councilman Dunn is proposing. So I think it might be something that we could look at.
Well, they'll be presented to you in a few minutes.
Okay, are you gonna do that during your commissioner or council comments, or you
Whatever time you like, if you'd like to.
do you have the amendments with you? Please just do that now. What is the resolution number?
38-213.
Okay, 2013 was previously introduced, and you're offering a new version with amendments because there's been some changes.
That is correct.
And what are the changes, do you know?
I don't have both copies with me, but the changes are there in its final form and will be presented to you by Mr. Massey, if you can read it to the record.
Does Mr. Massey need to read it into the record?
I think it'd be important for people to know what they're looking at.
Should this be done today or tonight?
Either.
I would prefer it done in public, in a public meeting. Is that all right?
You mean in a legislative meeting? This is a public meeting,
Well,
President Hodge.
Yes, but I suspect there'll be a lot more citizens tonight.
Here, yes, I think you're right. This to me is very succinct and to the point.
One of the differences I see right away is the issue on jury nullification. Did you already include that in yours?
Jury,
No, I did not include jury nullification.
And that's a big component.
Well,
I would remind you of the Clean Chesapeake Coalition, that this was a new way for the county to stand up to the state of Maryland in getting, organizing with other counties to have a stronger voice, and it was effective. The nullification is a new tact that, to be honest, I didn't even knew it existed.
jury nullification goes back to the 1800s. I think it was the 1800s in the state of South Carolina. I think it was North or South Carolina did a nullification.
South Carolina.
Pardon?
South Carolina against a federal tariff.
And then prior to that, Wisconsin did it in
All right, wait.
1850. It's not that discussion.
No. But what I would encourage you to do is look at Mr. Dunn's proposed resolution, and if you would like to include jury nullification in yours, it'd be better, if Mr. Dunn's not here to ask you, maybe you can.
Well, I gladly address that issue. I've already, reviewed jury nullification. It's never been allowed by the federal courts, and if anything, it's basically been totally denied and put aside. Jury nullification is not a practical way to do anything.
All right,
The information, I had case law, Ira Crow had done a presentation, I'll show that to you later. Also, I know in Councilman Dunn's, ordinance, it had, gave direction to our sheriff's department. Were you familiar with what he was proposing there?
People can propose what they want, but what
Yeah.
can you do?
You just got, okay, Councilman?
Now, you say the jury nullification is something that you can do, then tell me when it's been effective.
I'm addressing the point.
I am talking about a point.
Okay.
Tell me when it's been effective.
Let me finish my thought.
hold on, time out.
Can I finish? Can I finish?
No. Let's discuss this in more detail. Are we gonna need, how many more issues are you gonna have about this matter? A lot. Or are you trying to suggest that these should go the
To
other
address
way?
my point that he made, that his is very similar to my Councilman Dunn.
No, mine was presented 2 weeks before this even showed up, Mrs. Brunel.
I'm gonna address you on what you're saying, and don't be argumentative.
I'm not argumentative.
Okay. So, you said that you didn't understand why he wouldn't have approached you to have changed yours rather than to submit his own. I'm proposing that maybe he thought it was more different of what he wanted to submit. That's all I'm proposing. And nullification and the sheriff's department direction on, how they're to proceed in implementing the new state law. That might be two issues that are more different on yours than on his. That's all I'm saying.
Let me ask a question to Councilman McCarthy. Mr. McCarthy, have you read Mr. Dunn's proposed resolution?
Yes, I have read it.
Are you willing to include any, or are you satisfied that your resolution is what you want to propose?
I am completely convinced that what I'm proposing is a very doable resolution.
Okay. I guess I'll ask the council, is there a need for a workshop to sit down and discuss one or more of these proposals, or are we prepared to move forward with one or more of them?
Well, President Hodge, I think that's a good idea, that we do have a workshop that would give Councilman Dunn the opportunity to, explain why these two components, at least these two components should be included, or why he would suppose the center.
Okay, then we can put that in the form of a motion.
I make a motion that we table the two ordinances in lieu of a workshop to see if we can combine the two drafts.
Are you sure you want to table it? One's been already introduced, it's already,
I thought,
is that what your motion is really to do? Or do you?
okay, so if we don't table them, one will proceed to a vote, and one will be passed
It could.
possibly, right?
If we don't have a
So isn't
workshop.
that what the purpose of a workshop would be, to see if we can
Okay.
combine them, or
All right.
are we stalling?
All right, then there's a motion to table, does that also include the introduction of the other?
Well, you've already asked Mr. Massey to confirm if it can be
Okay,
introduced.
I didn't say it couldn't, I don't know.
Okay, well.
I didn't say it was gonna be tabled, I said we need to find out if Mr. Dunn is not here, can it be introduced? And I didn't say we weren't going to do that, I'm not sure yet.
Okay, if,
Okay,
it doesn't have to be tabled then, things can proceed, on the path that they are currently on. And if the majority of the council is agreeable to a workshop to have a discussion on this issue, it might even be that we would want
okay,
more
wait,
information.
okay, made
on
your
the-
motion, is there a second? Okay, hearing none, there's not gonna be a workshop, so we'll move forward. Is there any other concerns that you have about Mr. McCarthy's resolution?
I thought we were talking about Commissioner Dunn's, but, I'm just wondering, Mr. McCarthy, what are you hoping to accomplish with your resolution? Where are the teeth in it taking action?
You know, to be perfectly honest, I don't know if there are any serious teeth in this amendment or this resolution. But what resolution does have teeth?
All right,
This is basically a statement of our resolve to basically uniformly resist what the state of Maryland is trying to do.
okay.
Now, am I to overthrow the state of Maryland? No, I have no intentions to do such. Do I have any intentions of basically ignoring and disregarding their laws? No intention to do such either. But I am making a statement that I do not think that this is a constitutional thing that they're doing to us. Thank you.
All right, next item is resolution number 41-2013. This is a payment in lieu of taxes regarding the Old Dominion Cooperative and Central Power at Rock Springs generating station. Mr. Wine?
Yeah, I just have a few words before I turn it over to Craig. Craig's sort of taking the lead on discussions with ODEC about the amended pilot. But just a few words from the executive and staff, in that we're really excited about this project. A lot of us here at this table, I think Craig, Eric, and I were here with the initial development of the first project in Conowingo, and have been very pleased with the results of that. ODEC has proven to be a stellar neighbor in the community, and we're very excited about the prospects of being able to approve, the council approve a amended pilot, which will take us to the year 2035. With that, Craig can provide some details relating to the amendment.
Well, certainly. Thank you, Mr. Wine. Briefly, I believe the council was brought up to speed on the concept of the pilot in recent past, and subsequent to those discussions, we have reviewed and reconsidered the pilot agreement, and as such in our communications with Old Dominion. We've increased the amount of the pilot for the years fiscal 2016 to 2035 by an additional $135,000. As more information is coming to light, adding an additional $2.7 million to the flow through that period. So we view that as a positive. Again, all indications have been and expect to continue to be that Old Dominion have been wonderful stewards at the location. We're confident in their ability to carry out this project known as Wildcat Point, and remain available to answer any questions that you may have. We have some representatives from Old Dominion here with us today, just monitoring the process. We'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have.
All right, thank you. Do any of the council members have questions regarding the proposed resolution 41-2013 that we introduced tonight?
Craig, you had said that there is more money that is being generated in pilot since information has come to light.
That's what I said, yes, ma'am.
Could you explain?
The proposal that you reviewed probably 2 weeks ago had indicated a payment stream of approximately $3.5 million annually from fiscal 2016 to 2035. We've reconfigured it to the amount of $3,635,000 annually. The reason for that stems from further clarification on the amount of the investment associated with the project. You may have seen different numbers bandied about in the media as I believe maybe as high as $675 million, maybe as low as $568 million. Those numbers come from more particularly how a question is posed, whether that be amount of investment at the site as it relates to personal and real property taxes, or investment as it relates to the project that may in fact fall outside of our jurisdiction, namely items like natural gas utility lines for investment for the project that falls in the state of Pennsylvania. There could be all sorts of different things associated with the project. So upon further review, this is a more adequate characterization of the amount of investment associated with the project, and by default, that's increased the amount of dollars available for the pilot here at our location. So we're pretty comfortable with that.
And do we have a confirmation of how the water is being supplied for the project? I understand that it's very little amount of water that they're going to need, but at one point, wasn't Chester County Water Authority being looked at?
Mr. Ragone, any comments on that particular portion of it? I'll defer to the professionals.
My name's John McGovern, representing ODEC.
Oh, go ahead.
My name's John McGovern, I'm representing ODEC. Can you hear me? There's a lot of pieces of the project, we just don't have enough information yet. Water's one of them. We're going to submit our certificate application to the state sometime this month. I'll have a lot of that detail. Some of that won't even be done. Water's something we have to look at.
Do you have an amount of how much you're going to need?
Generally, combined cycle uses about 5 million gallons a day.
Okay. I was wanting to have a tour of the facility. Can that be arranged sometime this
We
week?
actually submitted some potential dates to staff. I think because there was a lot on the agenda, they haven't got back to us, but absolutely.
Mr. Whiteford, at the termination of the pilot program, and I understand that was July 1st of 2035, what's going to happen?
The taxation, the taxes to be realized at the site are based on a depreciated value of the asset. I believe we've also provided a list of what we believe that revenue stream could in fact look like, assuming all else equal, based on our understanding of the law as it relates to real property and personal property. the first year, with the termination of the pilot for 2036, would realize a payment stream of a little in excess of $4 million for that year, and then declining from that point with a payment stream through 2051.
Does that mean
They're gonna pay property taxes to the county with a tax bill.
after this expires, they would be paying regular property taxes at the depreciated value of their assets?
On real and personal property, that is correct.
Would that be a good idea to put this in here, that their determination that this is what's gonna happen?
I think it says that.
It does?
I have no reason to believe that that would not be in effect, because the pilot agreement merely substitutes for a specified period of time. Any other relationship would have to be
So-
inferred or implied.
So you're making something that's the default, what happen
Yeah.
on that?